This is your go-to podcast dedicated to getting the exclusive scoop from the industry's top influencers that are helping to shape the cybersecurity, audit, and IT governance landscape. Tune in as we dig deep and learn their motivators, explore their industry journey, and investigate their ideas and predictions on what the future holds. This is ISACA's Cyber Pros. Welcome to the show. And now, your Cyber Pros, Dustin Brewer and Frank Downs.
So Dustin and I were talking a little bit last week and this week, and probably every week at this point, about security as a service, because we've been doing a lot of that throughout our whole career in one way or another. We've been providing security as a service. And that's true. Think about it, right?
No, yeah.
I mean, even work for the government. They're like, we need this service.
Yeah. I don't know if it counts when your employer pays you to do that, if it's security as a service.
Well, then when they contracted us, what's that count as? Is that
that's a good point.
I don't know. Right. Like, right? Man, that's a whole other podcast. When does security become security as a service and when is it not? So what do we mean by security as a service? We should probably define it before we talk about it, just in case there's a few people who like wandered into this podcast and are like, who, what, right? Security as a service. Yeah. Security as a service. I don't have the textbook definition in front of me, but basically it's this whole concept that people don't have cybersecurity professionals, or they don't have security professionals, or they can't afford security professionals, or they can't find security professionals. For some reason or another, maybe there's been a great famine of security professionals specifically. Super odd. Don't know why that would happen, but who knows? But
we've all been starving for years. It's just...
yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, for one reason or another, there's a company, and there's a lot of companies like this that have security needs, but don't have the people to actually meet those needs on staff. And that's where security as a service comes in. And this is where a third party specifically comes in and kind of fills the role of the cybersecurity professionals that you need. Now, this has become a lot bigger, especially in the last, I'm going to say 5 years, because, and for a sad reason, I'd almost argue. I mean, there's two reasons. One's good, one's bad, one's nah. So the bad reason is that, I'll say there's two bad, there's one good. The bad reasons are as follows. One, there's been more attacks, and there's been more hacks, and there's been more incidents, and that's a problem. Now, the good thing that come out of that is people are starting to recognize that maybe we should take security seriously. All right, and are starting to invest in things that matter, like security. Not that other things in business don't matter, but security's been kind of overlooked for a while, right? But then the other bad thing they're learning, so this is a horrible experience sandwich right there, I guess, is that there's not enough people. And the people that you have, and if you'd like to know more, ISACA puts out a really great white paper on this every year called The State of Cybersecurity, where we lament about how few people are in the field and how hard it is to find the people in the field to come and convince them to come work for your company. So what we've got in this situation is an environment where companies who specifically specialize in having those people to perform those actions then provide it as a service. That's where you get things such as MSSPs, managed security service providers, right? MSSPs, and that's where you get consultants from, right? This is kind of a weird example. Even all these auditors are from a third party, but your auditors better be from a third party, or else they don't. There might be
there is internal audit, right? And I feel like auditors have had this kind of figured out for a lot longer.
Oh yeah. I agree. Yeah, I agree. But so what we've seen, and if you actually look at the data, Gartner has some great research out. I know they've put out a lot of research that shows over, especially the last, I want to say 3 years, but someone's going to write in and be like, no, it's only been 2. Right?
I'm going to do it. I'm going to write in.
Yeah, that's it. It's going to be Mr. Buster Druin said. Right. No, but there's been a change in investments, because in the past, a lot of people would invest in products instead of the services industry, because I don't blame them. If I thought there was like a magic tool that I could put into my system and it's like, I'm secure now. Hooray. Don't worry, guys. We turned on the firewall, right? We turned on the firewall. It's okay. That'd be awesome. But they're starting to realize it doesn't matter how many magic tools you put into the system, if there's no one there to like monitor them or configure them or make any of the important changes that are specific to your business or your line of work, it doesn't matter. So you've seen the investment shift from, it used to be like 70-30, then 60-40 in favor of products. Now it's at best 50-50%, if not, I think last I checked was like 55% investment in services over products. And that's where the security as a service kind of industry has kind of been born. And it's pretty impressive. Everything from, as we said, consultations, MSSPs, MDR, managed detection, that's put on your different endpoints and internal to the systems, and response, MDR, that's what it is. Those are all different services. Like you can buy, it's like rent a SOC at this point, right? Where you can just pay a subscription, and these SOCs that are at other companies will manage your security needs for you. It's remarkable. But like, at what point do you know when do you need it? And that's when Dustin and I were discussing it. Because and once you do realize that you need it, how do you convey that too? And we had a couple different ideas on that. And I'm being really long-winded, so Dustin, why don't you tell them that?
So no. Well, I've been typing to kind of make comments on what you've been saying, because I realize a lot of times I start trying to comment on what you just said, but I forget everything by the time I get there.
Because I talk too long. That's why.
To your point. So you made 2 points about like kind of why this shift is kind of happening, and one of it was like we have these attacks are kind of happening at a much higher rate. They're also going after the lower hanging fruit, right? So we see, ransomware happening on these massive scales like Colonial Pipeline and the name of the titling cloud provider. I can't ever remember their name off the top of my head, but somebody will put it in the comments below. But we also see this happening to like small municipal institutions. So like we'll see it happen to like a city hall in somewhere in New York, state, or a school, a very particular high school, somewhere in Florida. Like we see these things kind of happening, and it's collective. The cyber criminals are very organized, and they're making tons of money by doing this. But now it is no longer, who's ever going to look at our data? Oh, who's ever going to try to go after our stuff? We're just a small, a small city in New York, or a K through 12 educational system somewhere in Florida. Now everybody is kind of a target. We all have these targets on our back because we're probably going to pay, right? Depending on what the cost is, especially if the cost is low, right? If it's like $300 in Bitcoin and you can get right back to work today, guess what's going to happen? Someone's going to pay $300 in Bitcoin. They're going to get right back to work, and that's going to be that. And
remember Baltimore too. Remember Baltimore was like, no,
that's right.
Yeah. They were like, what was the ransom? It was a couple $1 million, and they're like, we're not going to do it. We're never going to pay these people. And then they ended up paying so much more money and trying to fix everything, like so much more money. It was rough.
And you have people who say things like, well, just don't pay. And then that, will go away. It's like, yeah, that's great. But that one institution who just like didn't pay now doesn't have their data. And what happens to them, right? So I'm not saying it's right to pay. I'm not saying it's wrong to pay. That's not really my judgment call to make. It is what it. I'm not going to say it is what it is. I'm not going to say that.
Don't say it.
I'm just going to move on. The second point you made, there's not enough people in cybersecurity, right? And like you mentioned, we have our state of cybersecurity this year, written by the great John Brandt at ISACA.
Yeah, John Brandt.
So it's out there for download for free. So please go check it out. But it says the same thing that we've been saying for the past 5 years, and at least 5 years, which is there aren't enough people in cybersecurity. Usually, it comes down to the amount of technical skills that somebody has. However, we're starting to see the shift in that too, where it's like, technical skills. We can train anybody on that. We need soft skills too, right? And so you see this kind of big push for soft skills. And we're seeing this kind of like IT and business starting to do this a little bit, and IT is starting to take over business a little bit because they're the main enablers, right? It's no longer, I've said this before, it reminds me of Warshak off of
Watchmen.
Yeah, where he's like, you guys don't understand. I'm not in here with you. You're all in here with me. It's like, and then he gets in a big fight in a jailhouse. And that's how I think about business and IT.
Yeah. Excellent example. Excellent.
And so we see all these issues kind of happening with the training pipelines, and academia is trying to do the best they can and trying to catch up to help get our workforce, our cybersecurity workforce, up to snuff. It's not working. Whatever we're currently doing isn't working, but everybody is really trying. So there are changes being made there. So now I don't remember what your original question was, because I went back to comment on your other stuff. Do you remember what your original question was?
No, what we were discussing the other day, like when do you know? When do you know that you need security as a service?
Yeah. And I'd say you got it. I mean, when you don't have the people, when you can't find the people, when maybe you're too small to have the necessity for an entire security force, right? Or even just one person as a security force. I think too often we see, startup companies grow, which is great, but they start growing, but they start growing at this really high rate. I got that really mixed up in my head because I said great and rate. Anyway, it's great that they're growing, but they're growing at such a fast rate that it's really hard for them to keep up with demands, keep up with governance, keep up with any kind of legislation or standards or whatever they need to keep up with, right? So it's a cost benefit analysis. Is it worth bringing on somebody? Or is it worth going and hiring these companies who have these whiz-bang folks who know what they're doing when it comes to security, have all these different, command control servers set up, or Splunk or whatever they're using to monitor, and go from there, and kind of understand, like, hey, here's the cost benefit, here's how much it would cost to do this, here's how much it would cost to do that, and yeah. What do you think? Like,
and it's interesting. I like that you brought up that growth rate, because you and I have been in these kinds of companies in the past where, like, they then go in when they first say get a contract that's like really gonna fund them for a while, or they first have a product that hits and it's like, yeah, we got it, we made it, we're an example of the American dream, success, guys, and then
then they have to do it.
yeah. And they hit this part, and in my experience, it's usually been they hit this zone that I like to call kind of like the danger zone, where if a company's bringing me in, or if they're like, hey, maybe you should consider, coming on over, and it's like, well, how many people do you guys have on board? And it's like I've noticed between 50 and I'd say 150, maybe 180. It's usually where there's like a lot of explosive growth really rapidly. And I call it the danger zone because things can go in any direction at that point, right? Like, I've been in companies where they have gone from 50 to 150 to 300 in under 2 years, right? And from 50 to over 200 in under a year. That's frighteningly fast at times. And if you don't have good people at the helm who can identify even things like security, let alone the business practices, right? Then you're cooked. Your goose is cooked. Mm-hmm. Right? Your cyber goose, especially.
Your
right?
Cyber goose is cooked. You heard it here first. Frank Downs, 2021. Your cyber goose is cooked.
But yeah, that's the thing that, and I say that because that's a very interesting space. Usually, when you get to, if you're at the 50 people mark, you've got somebody, and there's this person, right, who's in charge of computer guy. Right? Like, what is it from Saturday Night Live? Was it Nick Burns, the company
computer guy?
Yeah, right. Who that's your computer guy. They come up, something's broke, you call Nick. Something's not working, you call Nick. Your Gmail or your email, call Nick, right? Or you have like the old stodgy CEO who can't configure their TiVo, you call Nick, right? So that kind of thing. But then Nick's doing IT, right? First and foremost. Nick just wants you to leave him alone, so he wants to make things work. Nick is also just trying to keep people from yelling at him when they don't know how to configure something appropriately, right? So, like, it's an IT first mindset. And as a result, you have this small team of 1 or 0 or 2, right, that is overburdened and wears every single IT and cyber hat under the sun. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, in 2 years or 1 year, they go from 50 to issuing, like, just maintaining, like, say, 50 assets. And, plus cloud and all of that stuff. So we'll round up, we'll say maybe 80 assets, right? To, wow, in a lot of instances, up to 500, right? And that investment in security has not tracked with everything else. because there's this mindset of we got to get the operations, we got to get the business needs, we got to go, make it work. And then next thing you know, ransomware, right? The next thing you know, because then you get to a point of noticeability by the threat actors. And it's like, oh, hey, and believe you me, they're out there looking for you, right? They love getting the little guys because the little guys can't do much of anything, right? They can't, there's no resistance. And, you know, they'll even gauge whether you can pay the ransom they're asking or not, or whether it's just cheaper and more effective to sell your information, right? To sell the way to do it to other people. So that's where
smaller companies probably don't have a BCP, right? They probably don't even have
a policy to their name for real.
A backup plan at all. Like, you know, and that's, you know, and you and I have both been on webinars. We've both been on podcasts before where people are like, what do we do? How do we, you know, if we get hit with ransomware, what do we do? And it's like, restore from your last backup, right? That's kind of the answer. Either that or you're going to pay the ransom.
Yeah. And how often do you hear like, last backup?
Yeah.
Right?
Wait, what? And this is, I mean, and you know, everybody kind of points to the cloud and says, well, here's our savior, right? In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. In some ways, it opens you up a little bit more. And kind of to your original point, we have these businesses that are, you know, spinning up so quickly, and they quickly go, like you said, to 50 to 150 employees, and then, whoa, what do we do?
Yeah.
When the pandemic hit, that was kind of everybody, because now not only did you, even for larger companies that kind of already had something under control, now it was, you know, instead of having a bunch of endpoints physically located in the same area, now you've got a bunch of endpoints that are located in a bunch of different places.
Exactly.
So people started paying more and more attention, and we've all seen it. We all read, you know, as soon as the pandemic hit, there was guidance from ISACA on, you know, on what to do, how to control this, what kind of governance things. I think Lisa Villanueva I'm going to mispronounce her name here. Lisa Villanueva actually wrote a really great piece on using COBIT in order to kind of manage these external endpoints, these remote endpoints, and what you can, you know, how you can actually utilize COBIT to do that. And we saw the other membership-based organizations kind of doing the same thing. We saw IC Squared putting out guidance, CompTIA putting out guidance, EC Council putting out guidance, and all these places were doing that, which was great. And we've kind of all relaxed our posture a bit again. And now we see, at least in the United States, we're going through another wave, right? Where they're starting to shut things down again. And it's like, okay, you know what, here we all are back again, if we ever even went back to the office. So
Pandemic Delta edition. It's a blast, guys.
everybody is like scrambling once again to kind of make sure that their security is back up to snuff when it comes to remote workers. You know, we hear a lot of buzzwords like zero trust, you know, coming out, which it's not new. It's been around for a really, really long time, actually. And it's not just like a product. You can be like, implement zero trust, and you hit a button, or you buy a, you know, $100,000 piece of equipment and plug it into your network, and you're zero trust all of a sudden. We do kind of see this like new idea of zero trust as a service kind of coming out, where it's like this like overlay over everything, right? But that's kind of the same thing about what we're talking about here, right? It's security services, security management, or managed security services, right? It all kind of boils down to the same thing. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that are starting to develop. The pandemic was a catalyst. I mean, we've heard that about everything that's happened in the past. Like, we always blame the pandemic for it, but this truly
easy too. It's really causing problems, Dustin. I don't know if you've been watching the same show I have.
Right. No, Frank and I's podcast has gone down in viewership because of the pandemic. It's not people stopped listening or liking us.
That's it.
That's not what it was at all. Anyway, but yeah, you actually work with a company where you do these services.
Oh yeah. And things we see that are traditional. It's interesting, right? Because you have two kinds of people, two kinds of organizations. Organizations where something's happened.
Probably all organizations, but the ones who know
and then organizations where something hasn't happened. And you see this motivation when you have the people where something did happen. They're like, "Yup, we should have seen it." You know, we do incident response, and we take a look and we tell them how it happened and stuff like that. And then we give them, we show them all the different capabilities. And then we also have the capability. Then what happens then is usually you have companies that come, and after an incident has occurred, we help them fix it then too. And they're like, well, how could this have been fixed? And, it's a difficult discussion sometimes, because you can't just sit there and be like, because you don't have a security team, that's why this happened, right?
You could.
You could.
It just might not call you back.
It's not how you win friends and influence people in this line of work, though, right? But you have to tell them that staffing's critical. And if you look at the numbers too, it's interesting. Because if you look at an MSSP, and MSSPs are all over the place, whether you go with a company like us, like Blue Voyant, or whether you go with CrowdStrike Direct, or whether you go with Mandiant, or any of these companies, right? Mm-hmm. It's very much, everything comes down to cost benefit analysis, right? And right now, depending on the size of the organization, it's a whole lot cheaper to have someone come in and provide you that MSS, push out, a bunch of different nodes, agents like I mentioned, like Defender or CrowdStrike, and then keep an eye on it and have a SOC, and that gives you notifications all to a very convenient dashboard where you still have at least one security person, right? That's another thing with a lot of these people who get MSSP. They're like, oh, I pay for MSSP. I don't have to. I'm done. I paid you. I got the thing. No, you still need that POC to roll things out and all that, to put it in places and to monitor when we're like, hey guys, something's up. But if you look at it, the cost benefit analysis, it can be a lot cheaper than trying to find and maintain cyber professionals. Because let's take a look. What is it? Cyberseek.org, right? Is a great website for cybersecurity careers and so forth. And what they've done, I've used it for all my students when I teach grad students at night. They're like, well, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up in cyber. What do I do? I'm like,
and do all your grad students sound like Kermit the Frog?
Just like that. Like that. Okay. A few sound like Gonzo. Okay. And the ones you got to be concerned about are the ones that sound like Animal, or like cyber, right? But so I take them to cyberseek.org, and I'm like, look, these are all the different roles, you can look at. And guess what's been happening, Dustin? Even those starting positions are getting a lot closer to 100K, right? Even those starting cybersecurity analyst positions, junior, are like in the 90s now.
Yeah.
And so if you just wanted to start a team of a bunch of unexperienced cyber professionals, which I also don't recommend, I'm going to make a SOC full of junior personnel with no guidance whatsoever. You're still looking like at 3 or 4 people for even 100 to 200 size organization. That's not unheard of, right? You're looking at $400,000 to $500,000 when you factor in benefits and retirement and all that as well. So with all of these things, you got $500K, like easy spend there, and then you have to maintain them. Then you have to train them, send them to training. And God knows if they need to be promoted because they do a good job, or you need that seniority, right? And then you have on the other end MSSP. That'll be like, you can for 100 for the costs vary and so forth, but like you're talking like a fifth of that per year, a fifth to a fourth to at most a third of that, depending on your business line. I'm not a pricer. I'll put it to you that way. But like you're spending a lot less to just pay the subscription to have all this stuff rolled out so you can monitor it, right? So it's somebody else's problem and then they tell you and so forth. On paper, that looks a lot better, especially when you consider how competitive the cyber field is right now, where most people get cyber professionals from the company down the street and they just steal from each other. So, sorry, that was a bit of a rant there. But yeah, it's why it's this until and I honestly feel that ISACA, this is one of the reasons I love ISACA so much, because we have this calling to just help people, right? To help people in the industry, in cyber and in IT audit and so forth. But like to help them get trained up so they can do this stuff, because the long-term fix for this is going to be more people trained, more people engaged. And what ISACA has that other people don't have. Sorry, I'm just gushing right now, like all over ISACA, but I love it so much. One of the things another thing we have is those chapters with community involvement and so forth. So it's not like other organizations that I won't name on this because I'm not trying to pick fights, but like that are just big faceless organizations that might live like in different states, like down in like the middle, like that only help people somewhere else. I'm not going to do the end. Here you have presence everywhere, Yeah, I mean, I can drive 20 minutes and I can, well, again, before this pandemic, right? I could drive 20 minutes to a meeting. We have ISACA meetings and chapter meetings. It was great. Make friends. all getting excited about security control implementation.
That's right. Oh, or their lack of funding, right? To do so.
All right. Oh, I always complain about that.
Yep.
But that's the long-term fix. And as we're, as a group fixing it, you're going to keep needing services like this.
Right. And you and I have been part of, some of the ISACA conversations with like the CISO forums that we hold at different conferences that we do. And, that the hiring of talented people has always been at the top of the list of everybody's, issues. You and I have also talked to several organizations who did exactly what you just said, which is basically building a team out of non-experienced people, right? Like, I think we went and talked to one team, and their lead guy, who had been only there for 6 months, but was pretty well spun up or well versed in cybersecurity. I was like, "Oh, what'd you do this before this?" And he was like, "I was a manager at a Chili's or something like that." Yeah. And I was like, "What?" Like, and I was like, and they just had such an
those are my favorite. It's
just such an amazing training pipeline that this guy was just so spun up, and he was jumping into, he was doing incident response, jumping into the packets, doing what he needed to do to get the job done, and he loved it. Because it beat being a manager at Chili's. And I'm not saying nothing against Chili's. I actually do enjoy the restaurant.
I love Chili's.
Don't fan me.
Those baby back ribs.
Yeah, the baby back ribs are all right. Yeah, they actually have really good burgers there.
We're not even sponsored by them. I don't even know if we have sponsors. I don't
Chili's
know
and ISACA. It's a match made in heaven. No, but having that type of training pipeline and honestly being that open-minded to make that leap to do something like that is very hard to do, right?
It is.
But I don't want to say desperate times call for desperate measures, but I'd say, what's the other thing where something breeds ingenuity? What is it?
Oh, desperation breeds annuity? I don't know. Maybe I've just
whatever it is.
In my life.
We're desperate. We're beyond it at this point when it comes to staffing for cybersecurity professionals. So guess what? And also the things
necessity is the mother of invention.
There you go. Boom. Frank Downs, 2021.
No, that's it. That's the actual phrase. I didn't make that.
I was trying to give you credit for it, bro.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
No, but what we've been doing hasn't been working, right? No. We still get hacked all the time. We still, have data breaches. We still have data leaks. We still have insider threats. We still have outsider threats. It hasn't been working. So maybe it's time to try something new. Maybe it's time to try this a new way. And when I see companies going out and hiring people who don't necessarily have a technical background, that's great, because usually it's somebody who wants to have a technical background and then wants to dive into it, as opposed to somebody who might be either moved up to managerial positions because they were so good at being the technical person that now they can actually manage a whole team, which is great, or somebody who's so burned out from doing the technical stuff that they're kind of like, I can't look at another packet. Which in that case, that's job rotation, right? That's where that kind of stuff comes into play, where it's like, hey, instead of, looking at packets, how about you go train these guys, or how about you go, do something else? And that's where we've had these ideas for years and these policies for years when it comes to security, because that's just a good security practice to do job rotation or something like that, right? Also, mental health. It really helps with tech burnout and with other issues. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have any experience with that, Frank. I don't think we've ever been.
What's burnout? I don't know what that tastes like. What? Dustin has seen me get burned out on more than one occasion and more than one job, I might add, throughout our time together, and
vice versa. I mean, we've had our times. We've had our times.
The good news is, hopefully you have a friend as good as Dustin who will be like, I think you're burnt out. Maybe, bro, just take some time, just to maybe take a few steps back. They're not telling you this, but I'm gonna tell you that maybe take a breather.
Let's go grab a beer real quick.
Let's go to Chili's.
Let's go to Chili's, get a hamburger, some baby back ribs, a beer, all for $14.99. Actually, they have no, I'm just kidding. I
don't know. Who knows?
Now that we've successfully plugged Chili's, that's going to be the title of this podcast. Chili's or Applebee's.
They're going to be like, "How did you hear about us?" And they're like, "Oh, we heard about you on this podcast. That's what brought us in for your all-you-can-eat appetizers." I don't even know if that's a real thing.
And that's how Dustin and Frank got sued by Chili's.
Exactly, by Big Chili.
That's right.
big chili coming for us, Dustin.
Oh, not again.
Not again. But yeah, noting when hopefully you do have someone who can help you, because you can't always identify it, right?
Right.
And you can't always identify burnout. And no matter who may say what, mental health is one of the most important elements of doing well in this field. Whether you have whether you're part of an MSS or you have MSS or you need MSS, whether you have security as a service, are security as a service, or need security as a service, mental health is important.
That's right. See, everyone, it all comes right back together.
All right back.
Hang it all up in a nice, neat little package.
Time is a flat circle, and there it is. There we go. Right?
There you go.
So, at your company, at your organization, understanding when it might be time to investigate it. And especially if you are that one person, if you are that Nick Burns, right? And you are that one person, or you're part of that small group that is just that is overwhelmed and knows they're overwhelmed. Take the time to get the data together to make the presentation to the stakeholders, to show the stakeholders, look, this is something we need to put into the budget. This is something we need to consider, because taking a bad situation and making it worse doesn't help anybody, especially in today's business world where things are growing so fast, right? It'll just get worse if you don't address it now. And what is it? A pinch of prevention is better than a pound of cure, right? It's better that, and hey, you can always, even if the company decides not to do it, you'll always have said, hey, I gave you this presentation to try and point out, like, we could have avoided XYZ incident if we had done something like this. So you may even think it's futile. You'll at least have known that you tried if there's ever an event. So yeah, recognize when it's time, because not everyone always will.
Thank you for joining us today for this episode with our cyber pros, Dustin and Frank. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. To listen to more podcasts from ISACA, please visit isaca.org/podcast. Don't forget to subscribe for upcoming episodes.